What is up, everybody? I took down all the stuff. What's up, Amanda? What's up, Mandy Moore Hall? Yeah, it's cool to see y'all already here. Yeah, I've just been busy, and so there's not a lot of stuff that I'm. So like right now, I'm getting ready for a show. It's been going really good. It's just it takes all your freaking spare time away, and so it's just how it goes. What's up, Lord Cameron? Yeah, I've talked to some of y'all about what's going on. There's some career opportunities coming up. So I have really good ones. I can't really elaborate a whole lot, but because of that, I took down all the PowerPoints that I had. There was little flaws to each of them anyway, to where they would need to be redone or whatever. But I sent the yeah, thanks, Amanda. I saw your email. I just haven't really been reading anything, but it does mean a lot that everyone's like, "You alive? You good?" Um, everything's been good. Honestly, it's been going really well. It's probably one of those things where I kind of didn't want to mess up the streak I was on because it was, waking up with my wife, getting her food ready for the day and stuff, and then getting my son up, getting my food ready, fasted cardio. Then I would go knock that out. Then later on in the day, I would go and do some kind of training and train my daughter and stuff too. So everything's been going really well. I don't know how much I'm down body fat wise, but I've put on a fuck ton of muscle in the last, couple of months or so. A lot of muscles that was sleeping. Oh yeah, we do have Stephen Ray on the way. But I don't know the way that I went about my body and stuff over the last few years. I was completely cleaned out and everything, and no nicotine and no anything before we even tried to get pregnant. And then after the baby or something, I was considering doing like another thing. So instead of waiting to get in shape or whatever to get back to how I normally am or whatever, I just decided to go ahead and do it. Now, I did send a link to Chase and Tiger Shark and Marcel just to see where they are, if they're hanging around or not. But this was sort of a last minute thing anyway, just even going live or whatever. Not a whole lot to talk about, even though there was I even canceled StreamYard. What's going on with StreamYard was kind of interesting. I paid for a month, but I also was getting drafted every week. So after trying to cancel it and after trying to reverse it, I had to cancel everything just so that it wouldn't keep billing me. And I haven't had the desire to go live, so I haven't cranked it back up or anything. So, but yeah, that was kind of weird. I was kind of like, how the hell? But I can see something like that happening pretty easily. And I am eating right now, but I'm seeing if anybody is around. It's funny that the second I choose to go live, everybody's going to be in the middle of stuff. All right, so let's do this. Let's go to YouTube. So Bart Ehrman, who's a guy that I've used and cited before, he reinvented British and Irish history. Yeah, I can agree with that. I'm looking at some stuff here. Where is the new interview? I'll play that. But since the last live stream, we've sold a handful of goats. We've had 2 new baby goats born. We hatched 6 out of like 8 or 9 eggs. We hatched and they're growing. They're outside now and stuff. So we have like 24 chickens now. And I have 1 goat that, like, I swear she's going to give birth today. She's not in labor yet, but her back is arching and it's starting to look like they do when as storms coming in. So I know that barometric pressure and that humidity and stuff sometimes will toss them into it. I'm driving Uber Eats. Oh, what's up, Lord Cameron? Cool. Yeah, I'm alive. I'll be on for a little bit. I'll try to get Chase or Tiger Shark on or Marcel and talk to them for a second, and then I'll hang it up and let everybody who doesn't see it, they can go back and watch it. I lost a few subscribers, but it's not, I don't really care. I'm not really trying to do anything with the channel anymore, honestly, guys. So I wrote the book, and then I made a YouTube channel for the book to try to get more questions answered. Uh, People wouldn't give me answers through email with the bigger names that I was reaching out to. So I made the channel to get their attention to see if I could get some sort of feedback. Still didn't get it directly from everyone, but we had Gnostic Informant on and Stephen from Cross Bible. I'd go live if they wanted to jump on and talk about Greece and stuff, like on if they'd be wanting to on my show. That'd be cool. I would do that. No big deal. All right, so I saw Bart Ehrman. Let me type in Danny Jones. All right, where is, there we go. Sorry, I'm being born right now, y'all. All right, got it. I haven't used this in so long, I forgot how to do it. All right, share screen. Let's see what it looks like. All right. I haven't been watching any religious stuff, so it's kind of like
big ideas.
All my suggestions are all bodybuilding things and stuff.
But when you get one, use that.
What's up, Dr. Ehrman? Thanks for coming, man.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Pleasure to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
What's your background?
My background. How long do you have?
At least 3 hours.
Yeah, okay. Well, right. So I'm a scholar. My background, I got into biblical studies because I was a Christian as a teenager, a born-again evangelical Christian, and I went off to a fundamentalist Bible college after high school, and then went off to an evangelical liberal arts college, and I got really interested in studying Greek. The ancient language, Greek is an ancient language, and decided to do graduate work analyzing Greek manuscripts of the New Testament. And so I went to Princeton Theological Seminary, where the world's expert in the analysis of Greek manuscripts worked.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. All I was saying, I was muted. All I was saying was I did a research paper on everything that we talk about on this channel and for English. And, I got a good score on it and stuff or whatever. I had Tiger Shark peer review it. It was kind of cool. He actually provided 2 sources for it. What's up, Shimshu? Anu? Yeah, I don't even know when the last time I went live was. I've cut my hair. I've lost 20 pounds. I'm looking really good. I will eventually, if nothing else, I will have the updates on my physical condition walking into Christmas. December 6th is the show. And probably 12 weeks out or so, I'll start putting videos together of just like me at the gym and then going through the shit that I do for that sport or whatever you want to call it. I'll do updates on that and stuff probably, honestly, because like at this point, what else do we all what have we missed at this point, including all the other big box channels? Nothing. I don't think there's anything any of us have missed. Whether we agree with every detail or not, that's different. But I think all of us have heard every theory now. Pedophile Jesus, we've heard Jesus is a mushroom, the Eleusinian mysteries, and everything in and out between Dionysian stuff, Debaccan stuff. I really think everybody watching has so much knowledge on this stuff. I really don't know if there's any more that y'all can learn, even though there's always more you can learn. But like the extreme detail of some of the things you might not know now wouldn't change much of how you feel. You've already forged a really good impression on how you feel about stuff and whatnot. So, oh, what's up, Chase? I sent you the link to an email, though, not your phone. I can get it from there. Yeah, so I wasn't sure if my goat was going to give birth or not, but I figured it takes so long when they go into labor. It takes a couple of hours for them to get it going, or an hour or so. And my daughter can deliver the goats, if anything. She's already done it before. Let me play a little more of this.
And I spent years there working on that and did a master's degree and a PhD. Ended up teaching at Rutgers University for a few years, and I've been at North Carolina Chapel Hill now since 1988.
Oh, wow.
Teaching both undergraduate students and PhD students in early Christianity, New Testament, those kinds of things.
No. That game does.
And you mentioned that when you were younger, you had a belief and you were a practicing Christian.
That's right.
And what happened to you what was your evolution through your belief in Christianity?
Well, when I was raised in the church, I was raised in the Episcopal Church. But then when I was a teenager, mid-teenager, I had a born-again experience and became a very conservative evangelical. And a lot of my faith at that point was built on the idea that the Bible has no mistakes in it, completely inerrant. That was the view taught at the Moody Bible Institute I went to, and also at Wheaton College, where I did finished my undergraduate degree. That view started shifting when I went into graduate school. As I learned Hebrew, and so I was reading the New Testament in Greek and the Old Testament in Hebrew, and I learned French and German, so I could read.
What's going on, everybody? If you've just chimed in, I had a few more pop up. I haven't gone live in a while. I don't really have much more I was going to really do with the channel, but it has spawned some really cool stuff. We did some table readings with Chase, who's going to join us in a minute. He was telling me about this interview with Bart Ehrman, which I wanted to talk a little bit about just because we've all referred to Bart Ehrman with the Book of Mark and stuff. So his name's been floating around. Gnostic's done his interview, I think, once or twice. So I haven't watched any of this stuff in a long time. It's probably been 2 months of just bodybuilding shit again. The same crap I watched 10 years ago, and just watching dudes eat all day long so that you'll stuff your face with the food too. Really boring. Hey, what's up, Ash? Just watching some of this. I'm going to play a little bit more for those that are just chiming in.
What modern scholars are saying in these countries, and learned other ancient languages. And the more I studied, the more I realized, in fact, the Bible does have mistakes in it. There are contradictions, there are discrepancies, there are geographical errors, there are problems with the Bible. For a number of years, I became a more of a kind of mainline Protestant type who had a fairly liberal view of the Bible, a pretty liberal view of social issues and politics and things, but I've still identified with the church. I ended up leaving Christianity maybe about 30 years ago or so, and it wasn't directly related to my scholarship. It was trying to wrestle with the problem of why there's suffering in the world, why there's so much pain and misery if there's a God who's in control. And so I'd spent, I actually taught on it. I've written a book on it. I read a lot of philosophers and theologians and biblical scholars. And
I'm not trying to get kicked off necessarily, so I'm going to talk some more. And I haven't had anybody on in so long. Tiger Shark's probably, there he is. What up, dude?
What's up, guys?
It's been a while, man.
Nice haircut.
I know, yeah. So I cut it off, and it was a little bit longer and whatever. But then I've been doing so much like stair climbing and stuff. It's just hot, so I cut even more off. But I'm looking at some jobs. So
how's the working out going?
It's going good. It's spot on right now. I haven't missed shit. My strength is back for sure. I mean, I wasn't even doing very heavy weight for the longest time, but now I'm doing heavier stuff, and it's going good. I'm kind of worn out. I just got back from the gym, so I'm just kind of dead, eating like meal 2 and stuff. But yeah, man, just been chilling. What you been up to?
Just a lot of moving pieces in my personal life with a lot of work, and people have been reaching out doing interviews and stuff like that too. Like DM, like not talking like work interviews, I'm talking like just interviewing me and talking to people. And that's been cool too, because I'm just learning stuff. People have been sending me rough drafts of what they're writing. I've been looking at that. My mom just got her PhD, and
oh shit,
my
nice.
brother's wife just got her master's, and then you sent me your wife's master's.
Yeah.
So I was reading all this papers and all that stuff. So yeah, it's been a lot.
Her research article got a really good review for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, because you said it was about
non-STEM ADHD meds.
Exactly. Yeah, and ADHD meds today are just terrible, dude. They're terrible.
Yeah, man. I mean, I can't elaborate too much, but I mean, it's one of those things. Once you start taking them, it's hard to go. It's hard to do your day without them, and then getting off of them, you feel like death for a couple of days, But but I don't know. When I was younger, we tried a Strattera, an adult ADD medication.
That's the one that's like non-stimulant, right?
Yeah, it's non-controlled. What's up, David? And it was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't. I wanted to puke every time I took it, though.
Really?
I don't know how to explain. It was like I would take it, and by the time I was getting to school, I thought I was going to be puking. Oh. So even some mornings, I went to my dad's house in town and like went to go puke and just couldn't. And then I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" And then they put me on Concerta, which felt a lot like, I think, Adderall. I mean, my grades were great because it was just like super focused. You wanted to do everything, And then I told the Army that I'd never taken anything like that. I joined. So otherwise, they don't really let you join, So
I would have never guessed that you were on that stuff. I never would have guessed it because you're normally when I talk to you, you're pretty like you're not all over the place.
I don't think everybody needs it. I think that so I was ADD, not ADHD. So I think it's one of those things to where if I just really don't want to be somewhere and if I just really not interested in something, it's just hard to get into it. But the things that we all talk about, I'm super into. So I never had it in the Army. I never needed it. I, passed all the tests and courses and schools without it, and went back to college without it. I don't have it now, At 38, let me tell you, after my first math class back, I could totally use some freaking compound inequalities. Just, oh God, doing all that over and over again. But I had English and a math together. So I was just getting so busy. I had classes every week. And then I would do like math just all day. So that way, by the time the exam rolled around, I would have as good of a chance. And I just stopped going live. And I was like, well, nothing's really happened. So let's wait, for Gnostic to get back from Greece and stuff like that. So they're back now, and I'm sure they'd jump on,
Have you been watching them lately?
Well, I haven't been watching a lot of religious stuff. I've just been watching the same old school bodybuilding crap that I used to watch. And that's about all I've really seen. I did jump on his live well, I wasn't in the live, but I was just in the comments when he was going live from Greece, and they shouted me out, which felt cool because I'd kind of fallen off, you know, and whatnot.
There's been a lot of people asking about you.
Dude, yeah. Well, I was even wondering like what I should, like what kind of tempo I should have. And there's some job opportunities that I'm looking at though, which I've talked to you offline about some of this, to where I might even have to take all the videos down.
Yeah, you might. And I completely understand, man. I
could give the channel to someone else. Like I could give it to you.
Give it to Marcel.
Yeah, well, he's already got one, but like, and you do too, but I don't know. I mean,
I hear you 100%. If you get in the corporate world, it's not like immediate, but there might be an instance where somebody could try to use that against you. And that's why I have to watch what I say. That's why I come under an alias. That's why my name isn't out there. You know
right. Right. And mine's been all over, but it wasn't really on the live so much as it was in like the PowerPoint. So I took those down. That way that email wasn't there anymore, my full name and everything, you know. But I might still keep the channel, you know, if I take anything at all that's, you know, where it would really matter, I would totally take them all down, or I would take them down and put new ones up that just don't have some of the material we talked about so detailed, you know. That way it's not like something people would ask me about later, like, what the hell? And be like, oh man, oh my God. And that happened to this one dude I've been following, the SEAL that was French Foreign Legion. You know, when he got with the French Foreign Legion, he had worked in the cannabis industry for a while. And so they found a picture of him online holding a cannabis plant and was like, what's all that about? And he's like, oh, that's the guy that looks like me. Yeah. So just anything that.
Yeah. People don't realize, you know, all it takes is, and it's weird because we shouldn't really have to worry about it at the end of the day, but that's the world we live in. And there's companies that are like, they literally on their job, when you're applying to the job, it will say faith-based company, like literally. So
yeah.
If they look you up and they're like, oh, he's talking about Jesus doing this and that, there's no way for this guy, you know?
Yeah, or like a B corporation where they have like a ideology behind their store.
Yeah.
Or something, you know, or their business model or whatever. But yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff happening. Really badass stuff happening. And I just can't talk about it a lot, honestly. And there's not really much to say. It's just, you know, I was doing the landscaping thing for like a year and a half, and you know that it makes money. It's a cool business for sure, but you're broken. And so I got rid of that and you know, sold it all to my buddy. But I haven't had to do that in a while, so that's been a huge relief because I was still doing that when I made the channel. And then school started. I was still doing the channel, and nothing was really wrong, but I swear I just felt like I wasn't giving school enough attention. And I mean, the VA is paying out of the ass for this university. So I'm like, yeah, I want to get the best grade I can instead of just bullshitting through it, you know. But it's different going on from home.
Oh, everything's from home.
Yeah. So you have, you know, you have all day to do the stuff you want to do. But it's kind of like I don't want to like clean the house or mess with animals or do anything unless the schoolwork's done. So now that the semester's over, classes are finished and stuff, I'm kind of like, all right, cool.
How did you do? You got good grades or everything was good?
Yeah, I got like a 85 in math and like a 88 in English. But I will be completely honest. English, I shit out of my ass. It's English 130. I've already had English 101, 102 years ago, 20 years ago, and 10 years ago. I took, you know, 101 and 102. And so this course was pretty much just writing a paper in APA. So I wrote my draft, sent it to her, and missed the first two classes. So I got like a 50% for the class attendance, and that brought my grade way down. I was like, shit. But she literally, after I did the draft, she did a recording of everyone's paper review telling them what to do. I didn't even watch it. I finished the research paper, sent it to her without looking at any of her feedback at all, without correcting really anything, just knowing that she was going to give me a 90 or something, a pretty good grade. Because the amount of resources and citations I had for the topic was so good. Even though it was only 2,000 words, it was, you know, it was just so much. I really didn't think she was going to be able to mark it down a whole lot. You know, the cover page looked right. The formatting was right. Everything about it was right. I left one citation that was not in APA, and it was Dioscorides. And I forgot to fix it. And then I think I might have had like one or two things in the paper, you know, but it wasn't that bad. So the whole thing got an average of 95. For the research paper. But what was funnier was when we had a presentation on the research article, and I was like, oh, cool. So I'm going to be addressing the class. Nope. PowerPoint. So I pulled up the old PowerPoint and I told her all about the channel and the book and everything, and how I have hundreds of citations in the book, which you got a copy of. And it's all Ruck. It's all Gordon.
It's good. Yeah, I read it. It was good.
Yeah, it's kind of just like a biography of learning all the crap through the years. I don't really know if there's much of a story there. I was even going to ask her if she wanted to see a copy of it, and you know, see if she wanted to be involved with it at all. But you know, that's a big risk with just some weird professor you don't know, because they're accredited. They work for universities and stuff. But if they're a super big Christian, they're not going to want to be a part of it. So they might not like it. But the way I presented the argument was great. You know, she was like, I want y'all to have 5 reasons why you believe what you believe. And of course, the rest of the class had this boring ass shit like health is wealth and financial literacy is like the stuff that you typically write for college papers. That's not edgy at all. But I'm putting pictures of Jesus with an erection in my PowerPoint presentation.
That's radical. Yeah, that's radical.
You know, she's like, I want y'all to give me 5 reasons. So it was, okay, cultural surroundings, the pre-existing religions like Zoroastrian and stuff like that, all using the stuff, you know, and it being around, especially from the East. I talked about it, you know, Afghanistan and everybody. There's all this Greek and all this opium trade and everything. Everything I could kind of fit in there. Then I had the text itself. And then she said, do a counter argument. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, if Mark is plagiarized from Homer, then this whole thing, all of the biblical writings end up becoming trash. And you can't really use that, which is why I had those 4 other reasons. And then, of course, the next reason was chemical testing of the different drinking chalices to prove that it's not just written in the Greek magical papyri. We chemically tested it. Yes, they're using some kind of different entheogens, you know, and then there might have been one more, I think I even talked about how Christianity's hijacked a lot of things like winter solstice holidays and resurrection holidays. They've all belonged to another culture before Christianity. I mean, I really hit like everything. It was like all of that information just put into like, you know, kind of one. It could have been better too, but I didn't want to have to cite 50 pictures, you know? So I got some of the Google stock photos that you don't have to cite. And then
it's like the artwork, right?
Yeah. Because then because sometimes you'll find a picture and you'll go to the website that's using it and they'll have a citation for it, sort of, but sometimes it's just the artist that did it and not who took the photo of it. So I was kind of scared to put too much of that there and her mark me down.
Right.
Like you have all these pictures and none of them are properly, you know what I mean? So I went with the safest options possible that had like the photo credit in the article, and I just copy and paste that, you know, because I just wanted to get a good grade on that and walk away. And so I bullshitted English and got like an 88. And then math wasn't that tough. It's what got me the most was there was so many different things you do on one exam. it's not like it's 25 questions of just how to do 3 different things. It's 25 questions of 25 different operations. And so you got to make sure that you're giving them what they're asking for, factoring polynomials. You want to make sure that it's like, crap, they put rational exponents. Shit, let me change that. And so it changes the whole thing. Stuff like that sometimes would get me a little flustered, but not bad. And then there was always extra credit for the math courses. The first exam I got 100 on. The next one I got a 79, which was lucky because I got time. Oh, I remember what it was. The HonorLock software froze on me twice. And so I was panicking, trying to talk to the admins, getting the thing unlocked again. And I was like, I don't have anything that should be doing this. My goddamn book was still open at the bottom of my screen. And it didn't even register for 20 minutes. That's why it caught me off guard. I was already in the test for a few questions and I'm like, what the heck? So I emailed the teacher and I think he the ones I just didn't even answer, I think he just took off, which is cool because then they'll do that kind of crap in college, but just depends. I'm waiting on Chase to jump on and, I talked to Chase the other day. He watched that Bart Ehrman interview. Did you watch it at all?
I didn't watch it. I watched Amon's show, but not Bart Ehrman. I saw just the clips that Amon played, but wow, Danny just destroyed that guy. And that guy I can't believe that. I mean, maybe I can believe it. He is a theologist after all, but he sat there and just lied. Oh, I read Euripides this morning for an hour. And then he magically forgets apparently what he read or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what Chase was not very impressed with Bart Ehrman also. And I was like, damn. Because I think sometimes, people will they'll do that one-hit wonder thing with a book that's really good or a YouTube that's really good or, or maybe, I don't know, something. Nobel Peace Prize, deciphering of a fake Dead Sea Scroll. You'll have your one big thing that you're absolutely right on. And then sometimes I think the other stuff you've learned out of sequence or something, which a lot of people learn everything they know out of the sequence, but I don't know. And so I think Bart Ehrman could be very right about the Book of Mark. But from what Chase was saying, he was sort of steamrolling him, just asking him very simple questions. And Bart would get flustered something like that is what he was saying.
Well, that's my, he is good at the Gospel of Mary. He's good at picking at some of the Nag Hammadi texts, right?
Right.
We all acknowledge that. But when it comes down, if you're going to sit there and say, I'm an expert at the Bible, which I don't say I am, but I would expect you to at least know Greek in order to understand that.
At least enough. For 30 years of looking at Greek stuff, you should know some. At least you should be able to rattle off a few. Even I can say Mark 14:51, or whatever.
But he comes back and says, I know it. And clearly he doesn't. So that's the contention I have, because I wouldn't just sit there, especially on an interview, because you just now make yourself look silly. And all those comments, the show that Amon did the other day, he brought up the comment section, and I read the comments on the videos. I didn't watch the video, but I just saw the comments under Danny's. I was interested what people were saying. Yeah. And people that aren't even Amon fans are like, wow, they're like, Amon should use these clips because it goes along with what he's been saying. Yeah. And the thing with Amon too is I don't know if it's something over time that's happening with him, but whenever he does present anything, and to me, he's done it over time all the time, but people just say he hasn't, but he's just reading the text. That's all he's doing. He's not really doing this eisegesis that people claim he's doing. I could just interpret how I want to, and this is how I do that. He's actually bringing in multiple sources, not just one. He's questioning things. Now, could he be wrong? Yeah, because like you just said, if the whole book of Mark is just forgery and just fake, I mean, it means the whole thing is, right? But
yeah, then you can't decipher it too hard, you know, because it's they might be, I think they are sneaking in stuff, but also copying other things they're writing.
Yeah, and it's just, it's out there, and I think the majority of people struggle with it because they don't want to think that the drug angle of it is real. They don't want to admit that. So you have a lot of Christians, obviously, that don't want to admit it. And then you have a lot of people like Bart Ehrman that are in the university still, right? Professors that don't want to admit it either. And the people that are, so Ahmed's not the only one. There's a rabbi actually that is condemned at one of the universities in Tel Aviv that has said he thinks that he's just talking about the Old Testament, nothing about the New, because he's Jewish. Right. He said, my opinion of all these things in the Old Testament is basically a mass hallucination with psychedelic drugs. That's what he thinks. And as soon as he said it on all of the radio stations in Israel, they're all condemning him. They're saying that he's a heretic now. And he said this since 2008. And he went on national news, even in the States. It went up to like CBS and NBC even.
I think I saw him because there was a YouTube not too long ago where there was a rabbi and a couple other ones that it looked like a press conference almost. And he was talking about psychedelics being in the early years and stuff. And I don't know why it's so hard. I guess a lot of people that haven't had psychedelics, they probably don't understand. They just don't understand.
They don't understand.
And if they did, they probably would agree with it.
And that's why I think a lot of people that have done, but here's the thing. There's kind of an ecology around psychedelics too. And you probably know a bunch of friends, and I have a bunch of friends that really only did it once or twice. And that's all they ever need to do. They're like, I'm not doing that again. It scared them, for some of them. Some of them, they just say, well, it didn't really do much for me. Well, because you didn't take enough. And people that have been doing psychedelics for a long time, it's not about just taking a massive trip and yada, yada, but it's like if you go to you're flying through France, through Paris, and you have a connecting flight. And you go to the airport, just at the airport, and you're like, oh, I've been to France. But where did you go? Nowhere. You were just at the airport. Versus somebody that's been living in France for like 10 years, and they can explain the language and they can explain the city. And that's the difference. And so, like, yeah, you're right. But I think there's a lot of people that are still kind of green, or they use it as a party thing, which is weird. It could, like shrooms, they go to a music festival and they do shrooms there. It's not really the same thing.
Yeah, you definitely can't take too much, because once you almost can't blend the two. Like a gram.
I would take a shroom at a party, music festival, or with friends to come down off of a trip, not to go on a trip. I would do that to come down. You know what I mean?
What's up, J Frog? Yeah, so I went to a concert one time, and a gram. It was Polyphia, so there's no singer. It's just playing the whole time, and it was great. But then I went to another concert, and 2 grams was too much. Blood sugar's crashing, the heat was too much and shit. And so I think you can use it, but it's got to be the right thing. Like heavy metal type stuff and whatever is different. But Polyphia is it's almost like music made for that.
Yeah.
Because it's just instrumental and stuff, So I had a really good time with that. But then it too much. It's like the worst night of your life. So.
Well, Danny had the other guy on there. He had who was it? Was it Strassman? He had Strassman on his show. Remember that? I don't know if you watched that one.
Strassman.
That was a pretty good one. Strassman was around with like Terrence McKenna and stuff like that, and he did a bunch of psychedelics early on. So he's like one of these pioneers.
I have one of his articles in that last paper I did.
He went on Danny Jones' podcast, but the thing to realize about him now is. He's done research, so he has some publications and things of that nature. But he was raised as a Jewish kid, so he has a lot of, he reveres, the Jewish faith and things like that. And so when Danny was asking him about that angle of it, like drugs in the Bible, he kind of was like steering away from it a little bit. Yeah. And so all these guys that are kind of at the top, they steer away from it, and instead of either to me it's like they don't want to even talk about it, yet they know there's a whole litany of literature on this now, not just Amen, but a bunch of other people, and not just Ruck, but and
it's going to keep piling up too.
Well, I just posted something on your Discord this morning about there's a guy, Steph, what is his name? I can get his name right here. Stan Groff, LSD studies, when LSD was legal, because it was legal until 1966. That's when they made it illegal. And he was a psychiatrist. Oh, right. He did a bunch of clinical trials. and he wrote about people's experience. You know, all that stuff that people say they see on hallucinations from aliens and UFOs and weird stuff. Literally every single thing that's part of the paranormal, ghost, spirits, whatever, has already been seen on psychedelic substances. But he wrote books on that, and then he also did clinical studies about trying to cure people from alcoholism, from depression, anxiety, even schizophrenia, and other drug use. And he was quite successful. His success rate on curing people, getting people off alcohol, was like 50%.
Yeah.
So
it's been pretty good. Some of the research, my wife's seeing all the recent studies in school because it's what they're waiting to see to make these determinations. And I think there's been a cessation of smoking cigarettes after ketamine, LSD, and psilocybin, people, and DMT, people that don't want to smoke anymore but can't quit, they'll quit the cigarettes. And then I've seen here's Chase. I've also seen the weed thing. What up?
Hey man, I'm gonna be moving around just a little bit.
That's cool. Of course, he's probably in the one place that has like horrible service, so it freezes and stuff.
Until he comes back, what were you saying?
Oh, that people have been able to give up the alcohol.
Yes,
with some of this stuff, and with cannabis, they've been able to stay off of it because it was giving them something to use each night instead of one session, and then all of a sudden every day feels different for you. That's a lot of, it's all looking really good. I just hate that they haven't they haven't pushed forward. I mean, Biden didn't legalize.
There is so I think it's Colorado, and so I think they legalized it, and there's actually like clinics now opening up where you can go do it at the clinic. So I don't know if you can like buy it or cultivate it there legally. I have to look at it. And I know Washington State decriminalized it. So if you are growing it there, you're completely fine. And Washington State's also really cool because they have we all know probably almost everybody that's done shrooms has done Cubensis. And so they actually have Cubensis is like an average potency strain. And even if we talk about albino penis envy, it's still an average level. There's mushrooms that are far more potent than that. And like the state of Washington itself has 22 different species of potent mushrooms that grow in nature.
Isn't that where Paul Stamets lives?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I was born there, and I haven't been back ever since I was, a newborn, pretty much. And I totally would. I mean, honestly, me and my wife been looking at land in New Mexico, right near Cannon Air Force Base. There's like 16 shops, dispensaries, just in the town of Clovis alone. And I was like, oh, perfect. The land is cheap. So I was like, maybe in like 10 years, I'll buy like 3 or 4 acres out there and put a couple of sheds because you might have to grow it inside, for some, and for some parts of the year. It seems pretty dry out there.
You could you could do great in New Mexico. And it's actually, we got a guy on the Discord that's doing this. Shout out to him. So he has a bunch of cacti now. And if you go on like Reddit, people sell one cutting for like $50 a cutting.
I did that. So I had 3 San Pedros and they were beautiful. I actually put 3 San Pedros in my client's yard and the winter killed them. I said, man, you should have chopped them before the winter time came or the next morning after they're frozen, and you just should have put them in the freezer, and then you could have pulled the things out and chopped it up and done something with it or cut them off, and those shaman, they'll brew that for like 12 hours.
Yeah.
And then they'll hand out the drinks and stuff. And then I saw this one shaman, he would cleanse you. He would Christ you.
Yeah.
He would be the beer out of his mouth.
Yeah. Yeah.
These kids are dripping with stuff.
I know, right?
Like Ace Ventura.
So the funny part about that, if there's a spot in Mexico too where they do like the mushroom cult. There's like a city, little town there.
Oh,
It's outside Mexico City. It's like 2 hours, and people from the city go there to get purified and cleaned and cleansed.
Yeah.
But they were talking about when the Spanish came there, they had to, because the Spanish started killing the indigenous shamans. They started killing them because they were out there doing devil worship. And so what happened was the ones that were still practicing that medicine and those rituals just incorporated Christianity into it, so that they just got left alone. And so now you see this weird amalgamation of their indigenous culture plus Christianity all wrapped into one doing those rituals.
Yeah, Maria Sabina was the witch doctor from that town, that M. Gordon Wasson. Years ago, his wife was so interested in peyote and mushrooms and stuff. They went out and did the peyote ceremonies, and then they went down to that city, Oaxaca, Mexico, and they took pictures of Maria. And, you know, she even has pictures of Jesus.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it is blended now, you know, very much. Because you would think that someone working with ancient medicine wouldn't have too much interest in that, but they did totally integrate it into the whole thing. But I'm sure the way that they look at it's very different than, you know.
So since we were last on, there's been some pretty cool stuff I posted even. Wasson, you brought up Wasson. So one thing I wanted to say about him was that, remember him and Allegro, they went back and forth because Wasson's like, I don't believe it was a mushroom, and I don't think mushrooms had anything to do with it, because Allegro's book, now at the time, Allegro didn't have what we have today. He had like some artwork, but now we have a lot more of it that's actually supporting what he's doing. And there's another woman, Julia Brown, that's a PhD doing research that's actually supporting everything Allegro has said, actually. But Wasson, before he died, I have it right here. So Wasson was working with Panofsky in 1952. That's where Wasson got a lot of his bolstering in the academic world, which is they concluded wasn't much. But before Wasson died, he wrote a book, Persephone's Quest.
Yes.
Wasson Ott Ruck, 1986. And he said in that book, he admitted, page 74, 75, he said, I once said there was no mushroom in the Bible. I was wrong. It plays a hidden role. This is hidden from us until now, and a major one, and what is the best known episode of the Old Testament, the Garden of Eden story, and what happened to Adam and Eve. So the tree, that's the tree of life and knowledge that's there in that garden.
Yeah,
that's a mushroom. And all of that artwork that Allegro was alluding to, the trees weren't just trees. They were actually they were fungi. And that's why all those churches, there's like 20 some odd churches. Yeah, there you go, right there. 20 some odd churches that have
I marked it on paper.
And he even says too, he thinks, so Wasson then goes on to say he thought it was Amanita muscaria. And then even Panofsky himself says it. Panofsky himself says, he says, I confess he was prepared to admit that he had the possibility of it, that it was a real mushroom. So I don't know. It's pretty makes a lot more sense from that angle. But when you look at all the artwork, like you were alluding to in your paper, not just that one, but I know in there's only a couple of these, but now we have way more of them that support the mushroom theory with Jesus everywhere, with Mary, in that aura that was around Jesus's head. That was like a mushroom cap, dude.
Yeah, even AI says that now. Like
really?
They ask AI to make something like describing all the different religions, like a nostalgic artwork. And you had Judaism, which didn't have anything really entheogenic to it. But then you had like mushrooms everywhere in a cathedral for Christianity. And then you had like Islam was like, I don't know, something kind of vague, you know. It wasn't like it wasn't a picture of Muhammad or anything, obviously. But it was kind of like, yeah, AI is like, yeah, these are all magical drink ceremonies, all of them, you know, and it's just lasted till now. And they've played around with the words in the Bible to make, well, that there was actual blood rituals. So it just was. So, yeah. But trying to explain to someone like my teacher, for example, that oh, here's Chase. What up?
Hey guys, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Yeah, where are you guys at in the conversation? Sorry about that. I was trying to get back here to charge and then sit down, and my phone died. And
We were talking about there's more PhDs coming forward saying that Allegro is right about the entheogens, and the pictures they're starting to add up more and more. I guess there's a few. Tiger Shark said there's a few research articles that came out recently.
Yeah, there's a professor, Julia Brown, and I think even her husband's a professor that have been writing about that for a long time. But there is a debate between Gordon Wasson, because everybody in the Western world says that he didn't discover shit. The Mexicans were doing this mushroom down there for a long time, right? And
Right.
he went down there in 1952 and rediscovered, I guess you can say, the mushroom and incorporate that into Western society. But obviously Terence McKenna got involved, and everybody knows the story of Terence, Paul Stamets, and all the others. I know I shared some of the other guys too, but they wrote books on how to do the cultivation. You know, Terence McKenna has a psilocybin cubensis mushroom strain named after him, the McKenna. I never tried that one, but so it's just coming more into light that the Allegro was correct, and there's more now evidence in the church works. And it wasn't just like France and Germany. It stretched even to Turkey, where they found a lot of this artwork in the different churches and different time periods too.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You know, I'd be curious if there's any more museum pieces that they're going to be able to analyze if they haven't been totally cleaned, like the that one cup that was, I think it was analyzed last year, and they found all the different remnants of different drugs and the blood and the breast milk and all that stuff in that cup.
You want to hear some crazy shit?
I do.
Okay, so I think it was Marcel and Amin was talking about the blood, the viper, the venom, and all that stuff, right? So we know that snakes can cause hallucination, but there's other flora and fauna that do the same stuff. And a lot of cultures like the voodoo, not to bring in the Haitians and make it about them, but they'll use the pufferfish to induce paralysis, literally. So it's like it's a death ritual. So it feels like you're dying and then you come back.
Yeah.
And that's one of their voodoo things. But I was reading about other flora and fauna that have psychedelic activation. We all know about the DMT frogs, right? They secrete DMT out of their skin. But there's ants that secrete toxins, and then this is the wild one, giraffes. So giraffe bone marrow has high levels of, well, not high, but high enough to get high, DMT in it, dimethyltryptamine.
Holy crap.
And what did they find at Pompeii? So you brought up the Pompeii 79 AD, and there's PhDs that wrote papers on this too, where they found the kykeon vases, and they found animal assemblages in that with opium and other stuff mixed into that, right?
Yeah.
But what they found in conjunction with that was a giraffe bones, like the hip bone even, which is where they say they would get the marrow from, the hip and the femur for the hallucinogen. And there's a name for it because they got it, the Romans got it from a tribe that would make the drink that had the DMT in it from the giraffe to get high. They found the bones in the gutter in Rome.
That's insane. That's insane.
Academia hates to admit it.
Well, yeah. So yeah, I definitely want to talk about that. I was actually talking to like a tech astrologist, which is a funny thing. She's very bright, but she's looking into the, like, does the ancient Greek astrology mean anything like that? We were talking about the like, why would so many of these people do these rituals? Like, why are they in so many cultures? And I think that there's like some kind of, you could call it evolutionary, but some kind of nature, like key or cipher or something there that kind of shows that as a species, like our ability to maintain and survive through the history of the physics of the universe and stuff, that the people that made it are the ones who are doing these types of rituals. And the conversation started with, she has relatives, and there's a lot of schizophrenia in her family. And they all were like descendants of evangelical preachers, and they all believed that the voice in their head was absolutely God, right? And so, you could tell, if someone believes that or feels that, it's very difficult, probably impossible to communicate to them like, hey, that voice in your head, that's not God, because we're not in their experience, in their realm of like feeling that, and it makes them kind of dysfunctional within the tribe after a certain point, right? So what I was thinking was like, well, what if these rituals, like the death and resurrection, ayahuasca, like all of these different psychedelics, made better people, because it would force you to break away from your cognitive mind that we were maybe not quite, efficient at using the right way or whatever else. And then you would become less psychotic, or you'd become more connected. And then instead of hearing the voice in your head and feeling and thinking that it's God, you would be, like, oh no, I've already kind of died and come back, and I realize that's just a thinking part of my brain, or it's just a XYZ, so maybe it's not God. And then, I mean, if you think about it in a functional way, that's one of the reasons why her schizophrenic family members were so dysfunctional, because once they got manic and they believed they had the voice of God, and then paranoid, and it just like would just steamroll, right? So it's also really interesting that, yeah, they were also evangelical preachers, if there's some kind of lineage.
My brain's firing right now just based off of everything you just said. So I think if you keep going down the path looking for that evidence, you're going to find all of it. And Terence McKenna talks about the modern world, not just the religious world, but the modern society and culture. They're basically schizophrenic because of the way they believe things, right? And they don't really believe and incorporate the altered states of experience, which those people that don't know that, we call them cognocentric. And Michael Harner was an anthropologist that wrote about this, and he wrote about psychedelics. And he would claim that the Western scientists were ethnocentric, and they're also cognicentric because they didn't consider the altered states of consciousness. Where you're coming in with it for the healing part, there's another anthropologist that gets into this about it's called psychosomatic medicine, and the psychosomatic ailments where schizophrenia is one of them. Depression, anxiety, ADHD, other things like that could be, borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, all of those things. And he says, science doesn't know, they can't tell you why these work, but we know they work. And that's why they've used them for so long. There's fMRI studies and stuff like that I posted that talk about psilocybin, and like they increase your neural networks up to 10%. They actually do that. So you're firing 10% more, but the strength is also 10% more. So we know that that's a real thing, but there's still a lot of work to do in that arena. But going back to also what you said with the Greeks and the constellations and the astrology, if you look, so to tie that into triangulate, so we know it's there, right? We already know that, like, some of the goddesses, their tears would create plants. And if you go look up the plants, lo and behold, they're psychoactive plants.
That's right. That's so right,
if there's a really cool thing, it's called the Mayan Codex. And that Mayan Codex calendar is more accurate than Western science's calendar. And it was all shamans through ritual, like you just said, that made that calendar. And it's actually what Western scientists now are calling, and Russians, because I think it was a Russian guy that was cracking it, and then another person in the US that was cracking it, part of the government. I think he was a CIA or FBI guy. And they said, wow, like this calendar is more accurate than the one we have. But it's not just a calendar, it's actually an artificial intelligence. It's a computer program that they created on a mural.
Whoa.
There's a whole documentary on it, and there's books that
I'm gonna look that up. Yeah,
it's nuts. And that was through shaman ritual, how they created
right. Yeah, well, I kind of want to, I want to bridge that too into talking about the Ehrman interview, and I think it's related, like what we're talking about, and I don't know, I guess to like keep it concrete, I could give an example of when I was a visiting lecturer at a university briefly, and there was something strange like, so my mentor was still there. Her name is Ulla Stuckel, and she's like a German feminist. She's called a feminist filmmaker, right? But back then they didn't have a word for it. And so she's always really funny when people are like, what was it like to be a feminist back then? She's like, what are you talking about? I was making films or whatever else. Like, it wasn't defined in a way. But she had it was kind of a Jungian, I don't know, approach, but basically that you need to get outside of your eyes and you need to explore things, and that your communication, your art are vehicles for you give to people for them to ride and explore things, but you're not there to define things for them or the reality or whatever else. And that's kind of what entertainment was. And that falls in line with what the ancient Greek theater was for, which was seemed to be education in a real way, like giving you a virtual experience through imagery, like through acts and whatever else. And then your mind, your cognitive brain or unconscious or whatever, fills in the gaps. And if the things that you show somebody fit enough, you create the story or the experience in your head. But then it's always individual because each person is bringing all of their own experiences and reality to it. So it depends on how deep it can go, right? And so, like, I think that's just like I was already kind of like in that realm because I had her as a mentor. But when I returned, there was this weird thing or feeling that I felt like when I was at the university, which was the only thing I can compare it to is like fake black belts. And it's not like, it's like if you walked in, and jiu-jitsu is just a really good comparison for me because it's all about function, at least in my opinion. Like, it's not about winning or you're a badass or whatever else. When people get really good at it, you can tell by how someone moves that if they're a black belt level or like a very good level, just by their body movements and everybody's body is different and stuff like that. So there's something in an understanding of the art that you cannot fully capture or get if you were to memorize all the books and all the moves and say all the right words, right? You could talk to me in a conversation, but if on the mats, I'm going to see who you really are, right? And that, like, so when you're in an like the way academia is gone, it's not that those people aren't smart. It's not that they're not valuable. And it's not that, I think universities and education systems, I think, are like so needed, but they were similar to Bart Ehrman, where it was like, when I was watching that interview, it was like, I couldn't totally get mad at him, but he just, like, he was swimming in deep water and he didn't even know. He didn't know what he didn't know. And if he did, he might have tried to change the conversation or try to steer it somewhere else. And I appreciate that he didn't. I think he's probably a cool guy. And I've definitely watched some of his stuff and I've learned some stuff. But there's like something that happens in the thinking brain where, like, with like figures of authority or whatever else, where they get to this point, they stop being curious, where they're like, they think they've arrived somewhere. So, you know, maybe they were once a black belt, but then now they're at this position where, well, no, this is just the answer or whatever else. And they don't, I don't know how to explain it, but that's where I feel like we're at. Yeah. Well, and
he's really a black belt, but he's just gone off the deep end. You know?
Yeah. Well, and it just says something that about like that thing I'm always fascinated by is language is not reality. Like, you know, so when Alman says it's a technology, it's like that clicked with me immediately. Like, I was like, holy shit, yeah, it is. Because the more complex your language is, the more complex your thoughts can be. But what are what are you thinking for? You're using those thoughts to then interact with your environment better, communicate those ideas to somebody else, and then experience or interact with whatever the thing is you're doing and adjust and understand it in the doing, right? But all academia has become taking tests, memorizing things, like all the metrics they use. And so then it lends itself to start having like almost like priestly texts, you know, like this is dramatic film. This is, you know, whatever. This is a campy horror movie and stuff. And this is how you make a campy horror movie. And that's fine. I think those are all really good tools, but it's like I read about that and then I think I'm an expert in campy horror movies or something. And, you know, when I see someone doing something I don't think fits, I call them out, or I say, well, this isn't that, this isn't that. And I think that's what's happening, or what we saw happen, except it's on such an epic level to me because he's such a high up person. And to see him like totally not even understand what he was talking about is like, I don't know, man, I was floored. I thought this was that interview was a pretty big event, like the history of knowledge.
He exposed him, but to your point, he didn't have to be exposed. He could have just said, I don't know.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know, you know?
It sounds a lot smarter than making up an answer. I mean, Wes Huff, he can't stop doing that either. Instead of saying he doesn't know something, he will just, like a youth minister trying to console a distressed young guy, he finds a way to answer you the way you need to hear it. But instead of going, man, I don't really know. I've heard some like door knockers one time. I asked them if they wanted to come in and talk, and I'll never do that again. Fucking cussed me out, pointing the Bible in my face, and I was like, "But sir, they did the chemical." I'm like holding up my books. I'm like, "But sir, they did the." It was so horrible, man. But the guy did say, "I might not be smart enough to have the conversation you want to have," and I was like, "Well, that's fair," you know. Because if you haven't read the books, or if you just never heard of the concept, kind of like when someone, like when Amon asked Hillman or Dr. Kip, he asked him, well, you know, or when the topic of the Septuagint being first, Kip had never heard of that at all. So like he was so caught off guard, like, wait, what? Because from the way he's always interpreted it, obviously it was Hebrew being first and whatever. And I think now that people are questioning a lot more stuff, I think eventually they'll gain some traction. But there's this weird dark shadow over the whole idea, kind of like I'll vote for Democratic presidents if they'll legalize cannabis fully in the country, but no one ever does, you know. And I'll vote for, you know, a Republican guy if he's got something that is worth voting for. I've never voted in my life, but you know, I just wish that, like,
how dare you?
It's like they will never fully just legalize cannabis. And I feel like sometimes churches will never fully embrace that because there's so many people that like are getting off of hardcore drugs by going to the church in the first place. So can you imagine if someone said, yeah, well, Jesus was high as fuck in the garden? What? Was I more like that then? You know? So I don't know. It's changed so much.
The Jesus stuff is a lot of fun, right? But I've noticed it's also like, which is I guess why Amen always starts with Mark 14:51. Like it is like the loudest siren. It's like going into the middle of a church and blowing an air horn. Like everybody looks back, right? And it makes people uncomfortable. And so I love talking about that with you guys, but I think there's something way bigger, like in terms of what's being observed about like how these myths or these texts and how they function within how we all view reality. And I'm of the opinion that we might still be coming out of the dark ages.
Let me ask you a question, Case.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I showed you a picture of the Chinese symbol, the yin yang, what comes to mind when you see that?
Usually Alan Watts, like Alan Watts talking about Zen stuff.
So okay. So really look at what the alchemists saw that type of symbol as. They wouldn't pay attention to the white or the black. They would pay attention to the river that runs through it. And that river is what they would equate to as mercury. And mercury forms to whatever container it's in. And so it can shapeshift essentially. But it's also a dissolution thing. So it's like dissolving the boundaries between the two, which is what all the Greek stuff is about, which is what life and death is about, which is what you get on these psychedelic substances. And that's what those prophecies, the prophetic prophecies, come from, the Oracle at Delphi, which is in like every single piece of writing. And all of those gods and goddesses, if you read those mythos, I was doing a whole thing to see if I could find any that had nothing to do with drugs, literally. And out of like 200 of them that I look for, only 2 of them I could find that had nothing to do with drugs. Now, when I say that, some of them don't just say, wow, they were doing like Hypno. Hypnos is a god of sleep, and his cave is surrounded by poppy plants. So a lot of his stuff is about opium, but a lot of them just revert back to stories about them going and meeting with the oracle at Delphi. And if you look into that, you know, what she was doing to prophesy, right? Obviously she was doing something, whether it was a crack in a, you know, she was getting high off the earth, or something else was in her bowl and she was getting high for that. And that's really interesting that those are seen throughout different cultures with these prophecies. And then they take what they get from those journeys and they bring them back into the material world. So it's immaterial, bringing it to the material. And I think the conclusion, even Christianity, although I highly disagree, like if they say it's infinity when you die, just like that space, and that space, that void space, when you're on a trip or whatever, there is no such concept of time, right? It's just infinity. Anything can happen, all goes. As Heraclitus called it, Pantheres, which is all flows. That's probably what happens after death if we are partially that immaterial, right, in us that we're experiencing. And we get released from this material body into that. But you know who talked all about that? The Gnostics. The Gnostics talks about transcending through the material. They didn't even want to have kids because they thought that they were trapping light into the body. So that's like I tell people, Hans Jonas wrote a great book on Gnosticism, and you can read about how he even said the Gnostics were more like kind of like postmodernists, but in the 3rd century. But one of their philosophies in a lot of the Gnostic sects and groups was they didn't want to have children. So the idea of the church killing them off, not really. They kind of killed themselves off based on their own purification rituals and how they viewed matter and light and purification. And
what was that guy's name again? I'm sorry, I'm just writing it down.
Hans Jonas, yeah.
Okay.
Like the Jonas Brothers. Jonas Brothers or whatever. So yeah, Hans Jonas wrote a book, really good one, all about Gnostic religions. And you get a lot of information from there. And, you know, he's an expert at it. So you get a lot of his own, you know, theories and thoughts and things of that nature. And that he wrote one book that's pretty big. I think he wrote a bunch of, but one of them is bigger than the other. And
that sounds familiar.
Yeah, I think if you see it, you'd probably know it. So you see a lot of that going into it. And that's my own conclusion too. Although again, so I think a lot of the religions are coming out with the same answers. And we're not talking about just Western religions. We're talking about even religions in South America, where they were doing these psychedelics and they had rituals. There was actually new research came out where they were doing the snuff DMT, and almost the same crap happened. They didn't have a Jesus figure, but the males started snuffing it and they got scared. Some of the other males were like, what the hell is going on with this stuff? And they formed a hierarchy, and they made the women less. So they, right in their own religion, from around the DMT cult through snuffing, they made women, there was an inequality with women right there. And only a certain group of them could go and perform these rituals and experience the DMT, and then they would come back and tell others what to do and things like that. So you see almost a very, you know, two cultures not even around each other, but they get this, and others talk about this complex, the Messiah complex that you get. Strassman talked about it too on Danny Jones. And that's true. We know people that like go and they take these journeys and they come back and they go, you know, this is what I saw and I know everything now. And they go and tell everybody else. And it's like that one guy, you know, I don't knock him. Maybe he really believes that DMT laser shows him that we're in a simulation and he thinks all of this is just a simulation and there's nothing else to it. Cool. I mean, if that's what you really believe, and then he's going off and trying to get other people to show the same thing. Yeah. But I look at that and I'm like, even though I have my own beliefs on this about almost agreeing with what the Greeks say, I think the idea of heaven's kind of silly with how they say there's certain things. If it's infinity, anything goes. It's not just a certain way. But
have you looked up the Ionic life? Like, I mean, that's one of the most telling and epic things that's not talked about enough, that the promise of eternal life, like it's pretty clear. I think that it's like a total con added on once they maybe schismed from the drug rituals, or like wanted to, like, I guess gain more control, right? By like doing a war on drugs, getting rid of that, and then claiming to be the only ones with the divinity, right? And then over a few generations, like, life is really hard, man, and like it's confusing, right? And so if I know that when you're born, if you live long enough, you're going to eventually experience all these urges and threats and fear, and then eventually you're going to die. If there was something that you could do that was helpful to that, and that you would feel connected to your own personal divinity and transform, like, right, and keep going. If I could control that, and then say I'm the only one that can give it to you.
There you go.
Yeah,
Right?
and this is like I think it's really powerful, and one of the most underappreciated powerful elements of it is that this works on the atheistic mindset of modern era today. Because when I think about cognitive frameworks of navigating, it's like, if it's just, I have to believe, like, this divinity that's disconnected from everything is the way, or this materialism of nothingness, and nothing means anything, and random stuff, and I have to choose between the two. And if I'm a young person, I know there's everything kind of in between, but I'm full of, oh, my good life, woo, and if things are going okay, I'm gonna probably, like I was like 18 to like 25, I was like super overconfident, where I was like, nah, all this religion stuff, it's hocus pocus, it's just materialism. And maybe because you have testosterone, you have other things, like that existential fear hadn't set in yet. But as you experience life and age, and then you experience the aha moments in your life where something like hits you so hard that you your view of reality changes, and you feel like lost, right? Like, I don't know, if you like worked at a job for 10 years and got fired, if someone passes away, if you got in a car wreck, if whatever it is, then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, the world's not what I thought it was. It's a very helpless feeling, right? And so, like, these texts and these rituals and these and all these different drug things, I think I definitely think they're meant for that. And I don't think that you should look at them like, well, it's either all real or it's all nothing. And, all I have is this like logic thing in my brain. I'm free will and free thinking. And I just have to figure out the correct answer to life, and then I'll be happy, right? Which never really works out. But like the Bible has a lot of powerful cult texts in it. And maybe that's why they took them, or like why tyrannical people like started sharpening and forming the Bible and making a top-down system using the really powerful texts, right? That makes people harder to control, or I guess makes them like, you have to deal with people more. Like, if I'm a tyrant in the area, I don't want people to question me. I don't want I don't want to get into debates all the time. That's hard. That's difficult. I don't want to have to like figure out a way for our tribe to, get to a goal I have in mind, but I'm going to have to like trust other people and take risks or all this other stuff. Like that's for like a tyrannical personality. They don't want any dissent, right? They don't want anything. So you make a top-down system, and then it's basically like you take the most powerful cult texts, kind of put them all together, say it's something totally different. It's not related to any of the other stuff, all that other stuff is evil if you come across it, and we'll throw you in jail if you're doing the drugs, and anything related to feminine power, like, fuck that, or whatever else. And so it's like a really powerful cognitive control, like linguistic prison, basically, which I've heard Amen say, and I think it's pretty accurate. And we all actually have a touch of it inside of us, and we don't even know it because we're convinced that we're always like making our own free will choices, and we're super rational. We're in the age of enlightenment, and look how advanced we are, and all this other stuff. And I don't know.
If you zoom out of the individual stuff you just said, all that's true. If you just zoom out of it, what you're describing is basically people are forming boundaries. And what the psychedelic experience is it dissolves those boundaries. What is compassion? Compassion to care for your other human being, to see somebody that's suffering. Maybe they're not the same skin color, whatever. You're going to have compassion, but how are you going to have that? You have to dissolve that boundary of ego to say, I'm going to help this person rather than screw them. They're this, they're not with me. You know, even me, I'm not a big Christian, but you think just because a Christian guy is on the side of the road, he needs help, I'm going to be like, nah, screw him, you know?
Right.
And so instead of propping up boundaries, which is all throughout our culture, by the way, I mean, you want to talk about drugs. You know, the funniest joke is, the funniest joke here is that you can have a guy that's sitting there going, those hippies, you know, and their marijuana and their LSD. And then, you know, they're just dumb drug heads over there. And then he goes down to the street corner and he buys a bottle of whiskey. He buys a carton of cigarettes. He buys coffee. Those are his drugs. And those drugs are boundary forming drugs because they make you judge other people. And you know where we get indoctrinated with this shit is at school. Mm-hmm. It's in sports, my friend. If you play sports, I fucking hate that town. Why do you hate that town? Because they're our rivals. I hate that school.
They hate him at 45 years old still. Yeah, we would have kicked y'all's ass if you didn't cheat in the state playoffs.
So it's all about forming the boundaries and what you can do, because you don't have a choice. The psychedelics will melt those boundaries for you. Yeah. And so then you're seeing yourself outside of yourself finally. You're going, wow, I don't live in that cognitive mindset anymore where I have to think that they're separate than me. We're all actually the same, and we can actually experience the same things. And I'm going to have compassion for this other person. The problem in our country is they want to call it freedom, but there's nothing free about it because you have multiple cults pushing their own agenda, and they just want it the way they want it. Like you just said, the Christian agenda was early on, no more drugs. If you do that, you know, you can't mess with us. You know, we're going to have to do something else. If you're a Jew and you do it, you could get killed, stoned to death. And then that's how they started pushing it out. And it's all just forming boundaries, propping up boundaries wherever you go. And that's, to me, the biggest thing about the psychedelic experience. But there's an ecology to the hallucinations, right? So in the Bible, it even says that the young are going to have dreams and the old are going to have visions, right? Mm-hmm. Well, where do you think those come from? Those obviously came from, you can have them on dreams. Marcel and I talk about this, lucid dreaming. You know, we've all had experiences, even astral projection. Some of us were lucky enough, but that's all coming from the tryptamines that you eat in your diet. That's coming from the frontal cortex releasing that in your brain when you're dreaming. There's also a thing called hypnagogia, which is like when you're coming out of sleep back into consciousness. There's also hallucinations that happen there. It's called hypnagogia. Yeah. And then there's near-death experiences, which now scientifically they're going, okay, now we know that the near-death experience is also a release of DMT in the brain because it's a lack of
definitely.
And the oxygen deprivation in the brain releases DMT. Mm-hmm. And so people go through these near-death experiences. So
did I tell you about mine?
No, go ahead.
I was in a car wreck. I still don't remember the day it happened or what happened. But I was in pretty bad shape. And people always are like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no. Like, let me tell you the story first. There's only one kind of scary moment. But I can distinctly remember the feeling of what it was like when I woke up. And when I woke up, I just saw people smiling at me. First I had some kind of weird dream where somebody was showing me all the safety features on my little Prius fucking death trap. And then I woke up and there's people standing around me. It was like a firefighter, an ER nurse, a doctor. I mean, I must have just got rolled in and I'm like set up and they were smiling. So I smiled back at them and I was like, okay, cool. Hey, you know, and then they're like, you were in a car accident. And I could understand the language. I was like, oh, is everybody okay? They're like, well, you're not in great shape, but the other people were in a big truck. So they had some like whiplash or something, but do you know where you are? And I was just like, I was like, I have no idea. And I wasn't scared at all. I had no context for anything that's happened. I had probably had a little Dilaudid in me too, right? Because I had broken hips and some organ stuff. But I was just like, no, I don't. And they're like, do you know who you are? And I was like, no, I don't. Like, and it's like it was such a strange feeling, but I wasn't like scared or anything. And then as the day moved on, probably within like an hour to 2 hours, I started remembering who I was, but it didn't happen in ways that were, it didn't happen randomly. Like I remembered yesterday, then I remembered that one time in New York or something. It happened like all the way from the start, like childhood memories. And then it came up like a tree, like it's like the avatar tree, the life going through it, right? And like the memories would start coming back. And then I had little branch offs, like you did this for a little bit, and then that didn't work out. You were in high school for a little bit, then that was over. And then it formed to the tree all the way at the top. And then it's like your name, your Chase. And so it's this really, really like wild, like kind of psychedelic trip of like witnessing my cognitive brain put together my identity, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So that, I think it's definitely related to what you're talking about. And I mean, that would be wild if someone had a drug ritual, they could do that to you. Cause like you come back and you're just like, man, everything's pretty cool. Like, you know, any of the stuff I was depressed about or whatever else, it's like, oh, cool, man, life's really cool. Cause I wasn't thinking about all the, you know, the baggage and stuff like that. So, the cultures are doing stuff like that. The death and resurrection, it's gotta, I mean, I haven't taken DMT, but I hear sometimes it feels like you disappear and kind of become someone else. But, that would make sense for making like much more functional people. That makes any sense.
So the reason why McKenna talks about this with his brother, why they went down to South America in the first place to look for DMTs, because they were looking for an extender. So Strassman talked about this on Danny Jones.
I got the book right over there. True Hallucinations. Yeah.
There you go. Hell yeah. So Danny was explaining to Strassman what he experienced on his first time doing DMT, the pen, that guy that thinks everything's just a simulation matrix thing. Yeah. He brought it, and the guy, Danny, tried it. But, you know, smoking the DMT only lasts like 10 minutes, right? So everybody back then, Terrence McKenna and others, they're all looking to extend that experience. And they heard that, oh, there's this thing called ayahuasca that does that. And the DMT trip is like 8 hours. So they were like, what? And then they started talking to the shamans down there, the Icaros, and they were telling him, like, they were like, where are you from? And he's like, I'm from San Francisco. And they were like, oh, we've been there before. You know, these guys have never been out of the jungle. We've been there before. That's the place with the hills and the 2 bridges. And then they go, wow. Well, we've also been to the center of the Milky Way. And that's what made Terrence and his brother book a flight down there. Like, okay, we're coming now.
Yeah, it's La Guerra in Colombia. It's so when they got there, so Terrence and his brother are taking a boat down fucking Amazon, and there's these 2 chicks they're talking to, but one of the chicks had an ex-boyfriend hanging out with him the whole time, and he kept saying it because he's done so much DMT. He's like, I'm Hitler and Jesus. He would say this stuff that would just, and I know what he means because I totally know, like people have talked about it, like even on Danny Jones, like if our combined consciousness includes everyone that's ever lived consciousness, then you have the same consciousness in you that Hitler had. And all of Hitler's experiences and things he did are actually in your consciousness too. You just don't know it. So they get down to La Carrera and they get rid of that fucking guy. He had monkeys falling off the boat the whole time in cages and like birds that were flying away. He had all this crap with it. They got rid of the guy. And they get down to this, it's a church. It's a mission down there. But this one church with nobody there and some local nationals left over from the rubber slave stuff. And he talks about the rubber trade and how messed up the Christians were when they came there and what they made them do and how they punished them. Well, they get there and there's zebu cattle everywhere. And right when the mountain region comes into the valley, all the smoke and humidity stays right there. And as far as the eye could see, there was mushrooms growing everywhere in the field. But they found one vine of the ayahuasca Banisteriopsis capi vine. And that is what they decided to smoke with mushrooms when they first got there. But the one thing that stuck out the most was at the end, he sees a damn UFO.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was the weirdest thing. And that made me wonder if some of these ideas came from those experiences too. Because there's this huge theory, besides the theory of aliens and being, whether it be Anunnaki or now, there's also this theory that it's all been made up to false flag everybody.
Yeah.
They're crashing fake UFOs with midgets in them, pretty much, that have been.
Are you? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Are you breaking up on your end?
I can hear him fine.
Okay, it's my connection. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, you're good. You're good. And so I
was my connection, I think, was just a little off. Yeah. Sorry, bud.
Oh, you're fine. I was wondering if some of the alien stuff, was created like after like the government had started getting involved. And I wonder if they saw these things, because the shaman told Terence McKenna, oh, these are the vessels, the vehicles that we use to go through the dimensions. So this whole concept, and that's why there's UFOs drawn on the artwork in the Mayan temples and stuff. But it's like, it'd be crazy to think that everything that's happened here was all derived from psychedelic experiences, and nothing actually, anything physical that someone's seen has actually just been our technology since then. Which is, I don't want that to be the case. I want there to be actually something hiding out there. It's not like Elon Musk is going to tell you if there's aliens or not. He's going to say that there's not, so that you stop thinking that there are or whatever. And so, like, I wondered that with the psychedelic thing. Everyone sees these UFOs. And I didn't know if y'all had heard of that happening in any other, because that's kind of a different topic, but what if that's a way that they communicate with us?
The hope.
What if they sent for example, just hypothetically, I'm being creative. What if they sent a meteor with this mycelium on it, or these, and it is a technology that seeded the earth with psilocybin to a degree as a way to talk to us through those. It sounds crazy, but maybe if you're advanced enough of a technology and you've tapped into consciousness, I don't know. I have a lot of questions in that regard. So
yeah, that's what he said. He said that because spores can survive like in space, right?
Yeah.
And they
makes
can even
wonder a lot of stuff.
They can even survive an entry into the atmosphere because their shells are really hard. So it's possible that panspermia could be the origin of the fungus. We don't really know. I mean, they're very strange, but we've also had,
there's other stuff that works like that too here. So it's not like this is the one thing that's like nothing else. It's like, no, there's other stuff.
But people don't realize the fungi is closer to humans than plants are.
I was talking about that today. I was telling my son why we have so many plants in the house, and then I said, but fungus actually breathes in.
I'm gonna reset my router, and I'll be right back, guys.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll only be on for about 30 more minutes anyway. I think I have a goat giving birth today. I don't know. Fingers crossed.
Oh, nice.
She's not in labor yet, but it only takes about 2 hours for them to start to finish when they've had a few babies. We just had 2 born, 2 boys. I swear, I get more boys than girls, man. Bro, I'm telling you, I thought we had a girl at first too. I was checking the back end of them, but not trying to mess with them too much when they're first born. And then it was a boy. And then the second one was born as a boy. And I got one more goat that must have not gotten pregnant when the other 2 did. It must have missed the egg drop. So she got pregnant 30 days later. So the 25th of last month, we had the first goat, or the second. This is our second batch of goats. But last month on 25th, we had one born. Then on the 28th. And unlike the last ones, we didn't bring them over to here. We had them over in the back pasture, and we brought them over here last time, and they gave birth next to the house. But this past time, they gave birth before we even knew. So we walked out there, and there was just baby goats running around. So, and I think she's going to give birth today, Buttercup. She's my brown one. their backs start to crinkle. They start to, instead of it being smooth, it kind of starts to arch and have a jagged tailbone. It's kind of weird because their body's getting ready to push it out. So who knows? I'll hop off in about 30 minutes, but I might have a new goat tonight. We'll see. I don't know.
Nice.
I've been waiting.
Hopefully it's a girl.
Yeah, I know, man. I see. Last time we had 5 because one of them had triplets. So we had 3 boys and 2 girls, and we sold the boys and 1 girl. Well, we sold all but 1 girl. Yeah, we still have one of them left over. Yeah. So hopefully that'll be born soon. Nikki's freaking about as pregnant as it gets. She's still got a few more months, but she's
got 7 months now.
Yeah, we only got.
Close.
Well, he's due August 22nd. So July, June.
It's coming up,
So
yeah.
May 22nd will be 90 days out, pretty much. Yeah.
You got like one more CAT scan or something, or whatever,
Yeah.
little scan or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we're gonna do like the imaging, like where you can try to see like a really clear image of their face and stuff, But I'm excited. The thing about waiting on your baby to get here is it takes so long. It's just like, but she's doing really good. She's holding out really strong. She hasn't had any caffeine this whole time. She's doing good. And she's been working the whole time. So
Nice. Hey, Chase.
Hey, sorry about that. My router's being silly.
you're good.
Outside.
I'm going to
Walk
hop
outside.
on more and more, I think, than I have been. It was one of those things kind of like when you I'm going to take a break from Facebook. So you like delete the app and you just see how long you can go before you absolutely have to get on one again. I've done that with Instagram. I haven't been on Instagram in over a year and a half. I did it with Facebook till recently. Now I'm selling goats. So I cranked a new one up just to,
I want to get one, man.
yeah, man, they're easy.
Text
They're
me, text me off the stream. Tell me what the prices are.
$60.
That's pretty good. It's pretty good.
They're cheap, man. Sheep are way more expensive because they actually eat your grass. Goats kind of just
Eat everything.
they kind of walk around and don't really. They browse,
Yeah. There's something that I wanted to talk about too, because like related to like everything you were talking about with the psychedelics and the cosmos and I noticed and it's how I talk about it too, but every time like the I guess the archetype or the way that this stuff is viewed, right? The crunchy, hippie, kind of like Terrence McKenna, woo-woo, or like that vibe of what the experience is, I feel like kind of softens or like neuters what it actually implies in terms of like if that's what our species has been doing and it's given birth to all these new connections and the ways of viewing things in the cosmos, which physics are extraordinarily brutal, right? And we're going through space-time and we have to keep reproducing and making copies of ourselves or whatever else. I guess like a simpler, like so I can keep my brain from going off on a tangent. It's like the movie Interstellar, right? Where love is the fifth dimension. And it sounds really goofy.
Right.
But what if it's like not goofy, it's vital. It's like actually the best way to survive the brutality of physics and not in like a hippie soft way where you never have to be violent or anything like that, but that I don't know, basically that like we're not going to make it as a species if we get caught in a strict cognitive framework of like separate from nature. We think we know everything. We define things in like absolute terms. We commodify them and like silo them off, right? And so we treat our language like it's reality and our thoughts think like that. And so we're not engaging with it a lot. And then we have all these other senses and all these other instincts that get dull right? And I know surviving a normal life is difficult. But that's just like in our timeline and stuff. Like, we don't know what's down the road in the cosmos. We don't know if there's going to be, Cthulhu coming out of the ocean or something like that. And so like the ability to be able to like sense options and directions and find new frameworks of navigating could only come from people that experience life like that. Otherwise, like, I don't know if you've ever met, I guess we all actually, we're all blinded in a certain way, but you meet people that like they view everything through one kind of driver. Like, they've become a commercialized version of the thing that they are. Like, okay, I'm a hippie, so I'm going to view everything through love. And, and it's like, well, I can predict with 100% accuracy that that's going to end in turmoil somewhere, right? Because you're only looking at life and every decision you make through one lens or driver, right? But if I don't know if it's like a navigation system, if it's a North Star, it's somewhere you go. Like, as you throw your decisions through your like logic, like language logic or whatever else, it's going to affect the decisions you make, which is why I think the Greeks talked about greed being the most deadly thing for the species, because it means everything that you logic trap yourself, or like you make, like, okay, I'm going to make this decision, and what I have to strategize and do everything I can to get as much resources as I can from other people, and then hoard them and hold on to them. And that's going to affect like the decisions I make, and it could affect my dopamine cycles too. And like what I think is a reward, like, oh, well, it was a pretty bad thing we did at the job there, but I made money, so I got mine. So it's pretty good. It's good. Right. And if we have like a species that thinks like that, it makes sense that it would cause collapse. It would cause like eventually one monodirection, in addition to like taking resources from other people that have different skill sets, different alphas of the group, different ways of looking at the universe or whatever else. And if you've like starved out those people, you have less of those people for when, like, I don't know, a new virus comes into play or whatever else, someone who might have a different set of senses and way of looking at reality that is able to problem solve it. I don't know if any of that's making any sense. I'm trying to figure out how to simplify it down more. But I think it's more than just the religion. And I think it's more, it's like more than just like Christianity, bad or good or whatever else. It's like, it's like it's a powerful, I don't know. It's a navigation system. It's super, super duper powerful. And for us to not take it seriously, either throw it out with the bathwater and act like it's all hocus pocus, or to say that it's all literally true, like, that's a dangerous time for us to be in, I feel like, especially with like technology speeding up. And I don't know exactly how to get out of it, but it's something that we're digging at with Christianity, is showing how deeply ingrained in it we are. And I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that, of like,
it makes me think about,
I don't know, talking about this stuff where we're not just trying to jump up to the it's more like, hey guys, like, you guys like love, you guys like family, you guys like having freedom of expression, you guys like all this stuff. There's a better navigation system for that allows more of us to flourish, including a way better merit-based system that's not kings, that's not just top down, don't read, don't do anything like that. Because if you actually value those things, or if those are your virtues, don't you want to hear about the better way to do it? Because your way of thinking right now is causing you to do the exact opposite, kill the planet and everything like that. I don't know if that makes any sense. I'll stop rambling.
Well, it reminds me of this one girl that I guess she saw more colors in the color spectrum than we do. And the way she saw stuff, man, she drew a picture. And I guess it was kind of difficult for them to do this because she sees more colors than everybody else. I don't know, that alone it's hard to explain, I guess. But so they drew a picture of how she sees stuff, and man, it looked like almost like a psychedelic experience too. But what you're saying kind of reminds me of, like, you're saying how, well, there'll be somebody that comes along, or we will like ascend as a group of people to where the understanding and consciousness is just at a different place. but I'm not sure if that's exactly what you were getting at. But they just reminded me of that one example of that lady who saw so differently, you know. And I wonder if that'll happen as a mass. I mean, I don't know. There's that they talk about, like, you know, monkeys on this island doing the same things that monkeys on this other island are doing, and you know, but they're thousands of miles apart and stuff. And I think there's got to be a little bit of that. If consciousness is universal, and each time you're born, someone's born, they're sort of carbon dipped in everything that's been experienced before, obviously with some inherited stuff from your parents, but it's almost like, I don't know, have you ever seen, like, people have talked about seeing like the future on these visions, and then like 2 weeks later something that they saw in the visions happened, like Paul Stamets and his mud flood. He saw a bunch of cows in a mud flood dead in a vision, and then he saw it 2 weeks later in real life. And I saw a female Jesus years ago when I was doing psychedelics in Washington, and then years later I'm learning about this from, you know, oh boy, I got his book somewhere around here, but yeah, you know, and I wonder if that's something that, like, the powers that be are scared of. Like, if you really unlock your mental potential, it eliminates a lot of fear. I think people are scared of that. They don't want us to.
It's called prescience. Prescience. It's a word. It's basically prophecy. You know, you can see things before they happen. And this occurrence is actually routinely described with people that do psychedelics, you know, in different studies. One from the guy I said before, from Groff, but others. And then it's the incorporeal, which is the immaterial. But to get back to Chase's, you know, thoughts there, I 100% agree with him. But you know, and I've done it in my own life. So what I've done in my own life is material. So most of the world is stuck in the material, the physics, the atheists, where they think you die and there's nothing else. It's just the material world, and they'll make all of their reasoning be material. You also have it with people that talk about teleology or at the end of the world, like the Christians that say it's a theory of everything. A religion, they're millenarian, where they just say, we know how it's going to end, we know what's going to happen, and it's all in the material, and we're all going to die and go to heaven. Cool. But they're missing the other component of that, which is things that come out of the immaterial place. And people say, well, what is that? Well, we all dream. We all have to dream. It's a function of being a human. But with those dreams, people pull things out of. I mean, you're talking about creativity of music, of art, different artistic modes. But you're also looking at a reevaluation, as Nietzsche would call it, himself would call a reevaluation of values. And so what I've done in my own life is I've taken a lot of that material aspect, and now my whole mantra is like, don't consume. And if you are going to consume less. And if you're going to consume, why don't you just get something we already have a lot of shit around us. I mean, the antique stuff is everywhere. You don't need brand new shit, right? And so just do that. And that's what I do. I have 2 cars, and you know, they're not new, and I don't plan on buying any new vehicles. Even though I could, and it's just things like that. And then the other thing is the value stream, back to the nature aspect that you're talking about, because you're right. Not everybody on the planet can have the BMW and the iPhone. There's just not enough for every human on the planet. There's not enough material. It's a finite system, right? So how do we view that? I mean, you could go as far as saying, I think the whole planet should be declared an ecological zone, right? That maybe our jobs as humans is to actually be maintainers of the ecosystem, to steward in the world of the planet. But of course, you're going to have the people that are materialists that want to have power, control, hierarchy, you know, paternalism. You know, they want to say we own this all, and we're going to make money off of it. So it's a revaluing, and a good example of that is the Chief Oshkosh and the tribe called the Menominee in Wisconsin. They do lumber. They sell into the lumber market. But the way that they do this is they do it based off of regenerative farming of the lumber on their land. And they get it from the chief. The chief said, if you go this way and work that way and then work backwards, and you only get what's available, and they have what's available is designed that way because their value system is different. What they value over money. And so if the lumber market says, hey, we have this species of tree, we'll pay you the most for this one. They don't go take that species of tree that's going to get them the most money that day and sell it. They don't do that.
Yeah.
They get what's fallen. They get what's about to fall and they sell it. And so their value, they actually value soil erosion is a value of theirs that they put over money. Another one is carbon sequestration, so clean air and clean water. So these are the things that they're valuing over money, and they do it there, and nobody else does it like that. Literally nobody else. There's a Navajo PhD, Navajo Native American, that got his PhD in regenerative crop planting. And the same way that they do it today out there is the same way they did it back in the day.
Wow.
And it's all about the land and being, not disrupting it and, that sort of activity. And so they have a different value stream as well over money. And that's what we need to be, I think, more of. And, I agree with you 100% that in our society, in our culture, it's like, even if you go to a university, those kids are stuck with almost two choices: the religion and mainly Christianity, although Muslims creeping in there, right? And then you have the existentialist, right? The atheist side that says nothing, there's nothing that's going to happen. So it's very interesting because that leads to depression. And I know a lot of kids right now that are in college that are very depressed because they think life is meaningless. They just think if this is it and we're just a sack of bones and we just die afterwards, then what does it matter if I just sit at home and play video games all day?
Right.
I don't even have to do anything.
Yeah.
And that message, where that came from, and a lot of them know this, the postmodernists. Jean-Paul Sartre said this shit, and I can't disagree with this guy anymore, but he said nature is mute. And it's everything but fucking mute, my friend. And the psychedelics will show you this. There's pure intention in nature. There's pure affection and love in nature. And nature takes care of us. And we live in a symbiotic relationship with nature. And this gets back to
we are nature, baby.
We are, but we live in a symbiotic relationship with it. And people try to think that we don't. But it's like, well, what's in your gut right now that's breaking down the food you're putting in your mouth? Bacteria. Yeah. And so people think that just because the lion can kill a bunch of animals, that it's the king of the hierarchy, and it figured out biology. But the reality is the one that has dominated in biology is the bacteria, because they've attached themselves to literally every living thing on this planet. And they live in symbiotic relation. They're in the soil, they're in your gut, they're everywhere. So they're not out here dominating things. They're learning how to live with things and live and be in the symbiotic, nature and trade-off with things. And so that's where we need to go. We need to be more advanced in the ecosystem. Now, I'm not going to sit here and speculate if we're going to ever get off this rock or whatever. But my opinion is that we, like you said, we are Earth, we are nature, but more granular, we are Earth. We are a product of Earth as we know it. If we're ever going to leave this solar system, I think it's going to be on the planet. But that's funny that I said it, because we're supposed to collide with Andromeda in 2 billion years, something like that, right? And I don't think our solar system is going to survive that collision. So does the Earth just get kicked out, and then, what happens? I don't know. But is that the point?
Then it becomes a new moon for the next planet that we inhabit, like the one that's here. It's like, let's take this, go over there. Anyway.
And it feels to me too that, if I bring up everything you just said in a conversation, or everything we've been talking about, that people are like, oh, that's cool. That's your opinion. And when you stop siloing off all the different fields, I think it's closer to observation, right? So, love being the most powerful force was an example. And an example I can think of that's really clear is the mother who lifts the car up for her kid. I mean, that's a superpower. That's
is she thinking with this, or is she thinking with her heart?
so her whole body is working in conjunction for this like belief, feeling, God, whatever it is, right? And that feeling like causes her body to turn into a superhuman and lift a fucking car, even if it breaks her arms or whatever else. Like, how fucking crazy is that? Like,
Wow.
that is like, if you think about it, you step away from just like a general scene of it. It's just like, so someone's body over this, like caring for something outside of them or whatever else, releases all of these drugs, and all of her neurons and everything fire in conjunction to save this person, sacrificing herself if need be, right? Like, how powerful are we? Like, how amazing are humans? Not just up here with their thinking, like it's like the horror movie Unbreakable, where he like really goes off into the fun world about that stuff. And then you think about like, so that is like how strong that is, how powerful that is, and how vicious the universe is. But look at the light we have. Like, look at how if we choose to like go in that direction, and it doesn't have to do with like, well, I know what love is. It's this thought in my head, and when someone says it back to me, then that's love or whatever. Like, we don't. It's like I think that's what they meant by the gods. It's not like a defined thing. It's like this direction or this thing we go in, and our whole body wants to do it for the most part. About 89% of us, I think, are relatively socially like family oriented, and we're the ones who survived all the ups and downs of all the other primates. Regardless of what happened, we come from those people. Those people survived, and really, so money's a great tool, but really greedy people, sociopathic people, they're a small percentage of us, which means we're stronger than them. Over a long enough timeline, less of them survive. And there's something probably functional to like a psychopathic mind that thinks outside of the box far enough that you could see something that the other tribe is going in one direction doesn't see, and be brave or brazen enough or not care enough to make that decision. I think there is such a thing as a good psychopath, meaning like they have all of these functions of a psychopath, but they know that it's better for me to help those around me, even though I don't have a theory of mind and don't understand them, and it makes it better for me. So it's still kind of self-centered, but yeah, we need those types of people. It's like the sheep wolf, right? But the other ones, the ones that have risen in our culture and all over, like how the choice architecture rewards people for like not being really good at your job, not being a good leader, not being whatever else. It's usually something to do with a metric that you've made them more money, and that's seems to be pretty much it. And then we have like this whole corporate middle management problem. We have everybody's job typically has someone where you're like, why is that person in charge? And sometimes it's like they're learning and stuff like that. But if you think about it, like a company that's only working for shareholders, only for profit, like short-term, constant pumping it out. If I hire a real leader to run my, let's say, customer service department, they're going to care about their teammates. They're going to care about what their mission is to provide for the customer, something like that. They're going to make suggestions that have to do with investing in infrastructure,
Right.
or make suggestions that take care of the employees better. And the goal should always obviously be you have to generate capital because you can't stay afloat. But that would be like for the people that want infinite profit all the time, or they just want the money or whatever else, that would be a hindrance, right? They would have to, or they might unionize, right? They might be like, hey, so we end up with a lot of like these certain personality types, and some of them, like some people get sick, I think, and depressed and like whatever else, because they're like incongruent with what their body wants to do, maybe like their behavior patterns and stuff. But yeah, I don't, it doesn't feel like an observation. I mean, I feel like when the ancient Greek speaking people were talking about that, the greed stains your soul, that tyrants, are children who are afraid of death, and because they, or they're like the villain Satyr and Tenet, who went through the ritual, understands things, but instead of moving with nature, he decides, if I die, everything should die. That's like, I have a whole thing on Tenet. It's really great. I need to make it, but that they're the weakest of the species. And when I say weak, like people think like, oh, but that guy comes in or gal or whatever else, and they beat the town up or whatever else. And so they're on top. So they're the alpha or whatever else. And I'm not saying in a short-term weak. I'm saying against the cosmos weak, like, because they're going to be dead. We're all going to die. We're all short-term living people, right? Or creatures. So like, they're the weakest of the species where it really counts, and like and obviously it seems to always get in the way of all of the things we love, like, you know, music, art, science, like all these like new ways of doing things and fixing things and whatever else. And so it's like, it's just really strange to me because the culture that came up over the last couple of years, there's a popular phrase that went through all the podcasts: hard times create strong people create, or whatever, weak times create bad people create hard times create good people, or something like that. You know what I'm talking
Hard
about?
times create strong people create weak people create
Yeah.
hard times, then hard times create strong people. It's like a cycle.
Right. Yeah, but it's a cycle from ancient Greek speaking people. So that quote, I went back and like, well, I AI'd it. I'm like, who's first said this or whatever else? And it was someone, I think, that was on Rogan's podcast that was referencing a post-apocalyptic fiction novel that's pretty recent, and that was that guy's wording. But what he made was a post-apocalyptic fiction that had to do with like the Roman Empire falling and stuff like that. So that cycle is real, but it's from like Aristotle and like a few hundred years of like these really like educated people keeping records of history describing the cycle of civilization. And so like when I went through that, when it got popularized, everybody's like, yeah, we're in the weak times right now because, you know, these kids whining online and trans people and people not working and they just want free handouts, and the weak, oh man, we're in real trouble. So we need a strong man, right? We're in a populist situation now, and I think we got fed a fake strong man, but it's just an opinion. But the crazy thing is, though, is no one thought to go back and look at the actual civilization cycles that they're all talking about. Because if you did, it's really clear and outlined in like, there's all different descriptions. The tyrants are the weak. They're the ones that create the hard times. It's not the big muscly guy. It could be like, it has nothing to do with like whether you're like a wrestler or a big muscly guy or, you know, Cleopatra. It has to do with who you are in nature and how you move and make decisions and use your abilities to influence people. And those people, again, weaken the tribe, weaken the civilization by taking more of their fair share. That typically, because they're in that behavior pattern, that's all they become good at is lying, cheating, and hoarding, right? Mm-hmm. And so when the time comes when there's like, you know, a dragon at the tribe gates,
you got your
like, we got to send out we got to send our leader out there because he's the best of us. That guy's a fraud. Like he's only good at lying, cheating, stealing. So he's going to do like what characters do in like in the movie Aliens, where the corporate guy like abandons them and runs, and then the alien gets him in the end, right? He doesn't stay and fight with the group. He's not there to contribute or anything. Like, so it's the weakest, and the weakest in the sense that it will destroy the species. So it's like on a grand cosmic scale. I think that's like the observable fact on it. It doesn't mean like if we just, you know, I don't like the idea of like thinking that like, oh, if we just all thought like this, everything would get better. And it'll be hard, and like there'll still be suffering, there'll still be really difficult things. But for people that are depressed and young people that are going through like that stuff right now, there's a lot of wonderful things around us. Like we do have a lot of comforts and technology, and like, you know, people make the argument like you should be grateful. And I think there's definitely a reality to that. But the other thing is you're not connecting with who you are. Like what are you good at? Like who do you come from? And have you tried, I don't know, like engaging in the virtues that you claim to have?
Yeah,
like
that's what, you know,
start doing the things, you know, and you're going to find out like, yeah, you're not always going to get some kind of transactional consumer reward. Like when I help an old lady across the street, she might call me a slur or something, but, and no one knows I ever did help her, but that's what you do, you know, and you don't do it for the reward or whatever else. But I feel like if you start being who you are, like, and figuring that out, like, we'd probably be really surprised what we're all capable of. And it's not nihilistic, that we're part of a loop that keeps civilization going, that we all matter, if that makes any sense. It's like, I'm getting really hippie, but I think it's wild that like it's just observable.
It's not even that radical, but in this society that it is radical, which is sad, right? But to your point about Western science, so the materialist is, and others in the chat probably know, I know this, I got multiple degrees in it. But the problem with science, in my opinion, is that science is based on deduction and induction, and where that comes from, Aristotle and those Aristotelian Greeks came up with that. But if you look at that, they're taking an assumption and they're treating it as an axiom. They're treating it as a truth, and then they test it. The problem with that, it's all based on observation. So really what science actually is it's probability theory. So if I test something 1,000 times and I get this number, then I expect on the 1,001st try, it's going to be the same thing, right? That's probability theory in a nutshell. That's all it is. What's better is what you just talked about. You're talking about intuition and instinct, which is our birthright for every single human being. And what we should do is we should empower each other to have an experience, your direct experience, your authentic experience that Chase has that nobody else is going to have. If you and I sat in a room and we did 5 grams of psilocybin mushrooms, you're going to see shit and I'm going to see shit. And guess what? We're never going to see that shit again, probably. And it's going to be unique to either of us. And we have to, that is the value that we need to put above everything else. And so somebody says, well, what does intuition and instinct got to do with it? Well, I'll break it down. It's pretty easy. Mathematics is intuition. It's called intuitive mathematics. But what you do is you take what like you brought it up too before, prescient, like seeing things before they happen, like a prophecy, right? And then it happens later. Witch doctor. What you can do is if you take your instinct and your intuition and your own thoughts and you lay that over nature and you check for a 1-to-1 correspondence, you're going to be surprised at how fucking intelligent you actually are in nature. The problem is they took that away from you because they just said, you're going to live in this box, in this system, and you're going to do that. And that's why people feel hopeless because they're not in tune with nature anymore. Once you get outside,
brain application.
That's why Satie was, this nihilistic existentialist that thought nothing was there, that nature was, there's no answers in nature, nothing there.
Yeah, it's just up in a prison in his head.
He's in a mental prison. And so all these people get that in this society because that's what they think. Oh, I just have to get it. It's like the movie Fight Club is a good example of that too.
Oh, it's great. That's a great one. Yeah.
So it's get out of that thinking, go out in nature, find yourself again.
And you have to make things happen, right? Like as far as we can observe, there's no slot machine that I pull. Like I do X, Y, Z, and I get love. I do this, and I get like a consumer, like I'm picking it off the fucking shelf. You have to make love. You have to make friends. You have, like the heroic journey of failing and trying again and making friendships. Like we have to, the three of us have to make this friendship. It is not something we just get, if that makes any sense. And I think if that mindset could be instilled, I guess, in younger people and stuff like that too, when you're sad or you're going through, and like there's times, I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm not trying to tell anybody how to be, but I think there is something to realizing like, okay, well, I do this still on a daily basis sometimes where it's like, I don't really like all the shit that's going on or I'm not happy or whatever else. And then it's just like, let's go be happy. Let's go do something happy. Let's go do something happy for somebody else. Let's go make happy, let's go, let me create something or whatever. Let me bring it into the world or like, engage with, and then people would be like, oh yeah, well, the materialist is like, that's not real. It's not a real thing. I'm like, well, then what is it then? If you know what I mean, like if
all
anything,
is it material ideas? We all have dreams and ideas. Walt Disney did it. All the movies are done by it. Your writing is done by your movies that you make are done by your immaterial ideas that they'll say aren't real, that you're pulling from that space and making it real.
Yeah,
it's real, dude. Your thoughts are real.
Yeah,
that's why it's so interesting.
But if we, we're sitting around waiting for it, it's like you'll be waiting for Guffman. You'll be waiting forever.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, and
then things fall apart because things need to be maintained and everything. So anyway,
I cannot tell y'all how great today went live streaming. I haven't been on in so long. I was like, when am I ever gonna do it? And and hopefully we'll get Chase before we sign up. But we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. But I do want to get Chase back before I click end stream. But Tiger Shark, is there anything you want to say before we roll? I gotta go do some
nice
adult
seeing you
stuff
again, man.
around
Good
the
luck
house.
with the goat. Good luck with the kid. I will mention the instinct thing just real quick. 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about intuition, right, and getting back to that. But what is instinct? People, and this is why John Locke and others can't. We can knock all the Western philosophy down today. John Locke said everything's based off of your memory. Without it, you wouldn't really be a person. And then you have Kant saying the same thing about experience. Experience makes everything. That's what makes your character and who you are as a person. Well, let's go look at nature. If you look at, and we'll take a really simple example, a tadpole, baby tadpoles, they get attached to a leaf and there's like a wasp. Wasps like to eat these things. Without experience, without even knowing what danger is, whenever this wasp goes, and you watch a video of it, to go kill these little baby tadpoles in the sack still, as soon as it starts getting over them, they'll start dropping. They'll start dropping out. There's an instinct to that keeps them safe, that allows them to give them ability. It has nothing to do with experience, nothing to do with the memory of it. And that's what we need to get back to, I think, is people. And we need to cherish that and look at everybody and empower that inside everybody rather than just say, get a job, get a this, get a that. And if you don't, then you're worthless.
Be the example that everyone
Absolutely,
told
man.
me I was supposed to be. Be that and better. I'm just playing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we got off on a lot of tangents, but I hope everybody goes and watches Bart Ehrman's video, and maybe it's a turning point where he can open himself up to I don't know, using his talents to now re-explore what he thought he knew but didn't really know, and can add or find new things. I hope it's that direction and not the doubling down and then trying to smear and snuff stuff out. And then, if you don't like everything Almond says, nothing wrong with that, right? It's not for everybody, but it's undeniable, I think, that whether you think you're going to argue about the nuances of small words or the overall direction, the portal that he's opening.
Yeah,
it's real. It's showing things in a whole new light. And instead of being afraid of it, maybe think about it. This is exciting, because now all that nihilistic stuff you thought you knew about reality and life's just meaningless and it's just that and people are just like that. Like, what if you were wrong about all of it? And what if there's a wild history that you come from of amazing people and terrifying people, and a whole way of navigating the cosmos that could be better than we could ever imagine. And also be scary. I mean, it's exciting. It's exciting to see. And it's not like Ancient Aliens where you're like, I don't know if I don't really see any reality to that. This could actually be super functional knowledge that we can apply and discover and stuff like that. And I think, I don't know. I'm curious to see how this is all going to turn out, because I feel like if this was an actual arena of debate, that Bible side, it's just like lights out.
Well, luckily,
they have nothing in their hands right now. It's wild.
Well, luckily,
like that specific point of view, not all.
We should be seeing some interesting things coming from your way in the next year, which will be another stepping stone. And luckily, me and Tiger Shark were able to be in on this a little bit, so it's really cool. But we got some Chase got some big stuff coming up, so I'm not going to spoil it. But next
big stuff.
May 31st is in 2 weeks, so I'll probably plan on going live Saturday, and we'll get Mandy, Tiger Shark, Chase, and I have enough time to see if Gnostic and Steve want to jump in. And they'll have enough, they'll be able to tell me yes or no way ahead of time if they're going to be free or in town that day. So, and they're always, they're friends here and stuff. But and hopefully we'll see Marcel. He's been really busy with this new bar that he opened. So, so join us in 2 weeks, May 31st. I'll go live again, and we'll see what new topics we have to bring up and stuff. But until then, I appreciate it, guys. Chase, any last words?
You're muted.
I guess we should all just start learning ancient Greek, right? That's I mean, I have so many plates spinning in my life right now, but I think that's the bottom line. Go read ancient Greek and enjoy the ride, guys.
The one thing I
hopefully get
didn't
some cool
do
stuff out.
was, just in case people weren't sure, it's not so much the Mark 14:51 passage that alludes to the Big Lebowski's pedophile Jesus insinuation. It's actually Mark 19:13 through 17. Here, the people brought little children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and to pray for them. But his disciples rebuked them. Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." So that's actually the quote when we refer to the pedophilia, the entheogenic practices. Unfortunately, very uncomfortable for people to talk about. This is actually one of the passages that talks about age ranges younger than Neoniskos. So for those that have been struggling with the definitions and having arguments about it with people or friends or whoever, that's actually not really the passage that they're referring to. It's more so this passage, which is one of many that refer to Brithis, Padias, the younger denominations of kids and stuff. I was going to say something about that way earlier, but I never did because we were kind of talking about Mark 14:51 for a second. But Tiger Shark, anything? Last words?
Nah, man, good luck with the goat. Hopefully it's a girl.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, I appreciate it, guys. I'm going to go ahead and just band-aid the episode, but I'll see everybody in 2 weeks.
Ciao.
Peace.
Bye-bye.